Chapter 10. Continued. "Move a step with that knife at your peril!" exclaimed Mendez, pulling back the trigger of his pistol from a half to a full cock as he spoke. Horton moved not. "I came here, sir, to see that you righted one wrong of the many you have been guilty of, and right it you shall. I came here to see a wedding, and there is going to be one. You are the groom-elect, and you know who the bride-elect is. As society is constituted, it is needful that you should give your name to the one you have betrayed, and you must and shall. You leave here a bridegroom, or, I mean to have remarked, Mr. Horton," said Mendez, in another tone, breaking in upon himself, "that it is a pity she must take yours in order to save her own good name, but you must give it to her, and as I said, you shall." "Never, never!" exclaimed Horton, striking the point of the knife into the table. "Talk of forcing me to marry her? Why, you're a darned fool. You'd better travel, you had. Ha ha ha! What do you think of that, Tom?" This gentleman, looking at the muzzle of the revolver in the left hand of Mendez, made no reply. "Oh, there's no compulsion about it, only you must," returned the arbiter. "My friend goes away from here, Mrs. Horton, or, let me say, that she shall not long remain the wife of a wretch like you, if I can persuade her to throw off the name that smells to heaven." "I should hope her friend would be successful in the event of her ever taking my name," said Horton in a sneering and less raging tone. "You're her friend, eh? And I'm to marry her? That's your ipse dixit, your ultimatum, is it?" he sneeringly queried. "It is. Are you ready for the bridal, Mr. Horton?" asked Mendez, now dropping the two pistols to his sides. "Never, as you propose. Who you are I don't know, and don't care a cent. But I'd see you or anybody else in your role of would-be compeller to blazes first, before I would marry her or any other damsel like her," roared out Horton. The lioness was now fairly aroused. The last words of the speaker aroused it. "You infamous wretch! You perjured villain! You cursed of all good! You shall marry her, and here where you so basely insulted her. Where was the insult shall be the atonement. Lay down that knife, and prepare for the nuptials. Are you ready for the sacrifice? Well, sir?" queried Mendez of Horton, the muzzles of both pistols resting upon the table. "Go to blazes!" thundered Horton. "I don't know you, or by what right you intrude here. Don't know by what right you presume to dictate to, browbeat and coerce me in matters of my own, and not your concern. By thunder, I won't have it! You are a confounded intruder, and have no business here, much less with my private affairs. You'll get out of this mighty quick." "I don't intend to remain here a great while, Mr. Horton, but long enough, however, to transact the business in hand. It will be finished in a short time, when I shall get out of this of my own accord," returned Mendez in the coolest and most unconcerned manner possible. The lioness was couchant. It irritated Horn to the boiling point of rage, this sang-froid. "Get a policeman, waiter, and have this fellow put out," he roared out to the servant, who had stood during the scene like a wooden man, with his eyes staring at the intruder and mouth agape. "Move, you stupid!" he cried the waiter, not starting at his command. "Don't you move, waiter. You can make more money by staying," quietly said Mendez. The servant didn't move. Countermanding the order of Horton exasperated that gentleman beyond the power of endurance, and with a fearful oath he hurled the long and heavy carving knife at the aggravating young fellow, with a force that would have sent it through and through the latter's body had it struck it, and point on. Luckily, the flying weapon was dodged, and went clashing against the partition, falling harmlessly to the floor. "Give me your pistol, Tom. Mine's at home," said the maddened man, rising as he spoke, with his left hand on the table, his right held forth towards his friend. The gentleman dressed, having pocketed his pistol, and having feared that in the left hand of Mendez, now pointing at his head, made no sign of taking forth the weapon, but sat immovable, his eyes fixed upon the latter, who stood with the muzzle of one pistol resting on the table, pointing with the other at him. "Give me the pistol, you darned fool!" roared Horton fiercely. "I won't do it, Harry," said the other. "By, I'll have it!" cried Horton, foaming with rage, springing round the table as he spoke. "Hadn't you ladies better retire?" Very coolly and with a smile spoke Mendez, glancing from one to another of the females. As if released from a spell whose charm the intruder's words had broken, the women rose simultaneously from the table and made for the hall, remaining near the door, however. The movement of Horton had been so sudden and was so quickly executed that his friend was unprepared for him, and hardly resisted when the former caught hold of him and thrust his hand into the pistol pocket, securing the weapon. Perhaps he was not one of the resisting kind, anyway. "1 minute you've got in which to get out of this, you insolent intruder!" cried Horton, savagely, half-cocking the pistol he had secured and looking 1,000 daggers at Mendez. "1 minute, eh?" coolly and quietly interrogated the latter. "Yes, and if you don't get then, I'll fire by—" fiercely returned the other. "Plenty of time to ask one question," said Mendez, the muzzles of both his pistols resting now on the table. "Are you ready for your wedding, Mr. Horton? The wronged one waits, and justice is impatient." This was the last feather. The camel's back of endurance was broken. The rage of the roué was most extreme. His face paled to an ashen hue, and for a moment he was powerless to speak. Mendez, his tormentor, looked at him calmly, and seemed to enjoy his great perturbation. The question he asked again. Horton found tongue then. "No," he answered. "Be who you may, the devil from hell, 10,000 times no! I be forced into marrying a—" "Don't you speak the word, Harry Horton," broke in Mendez, his face paling too, his lips compressing, and his eyes shooting a scathing glance at the other. The word was not spoken. "Who is this fellow? What has he got on me?" were the questions he mentally asked, gazing into the face of Mendez, as if to fathom the mystery, too deep, however, to be sounded by him. He made up his mind, however, in a moment, that Mendez had no hold upon him, strong enough to force him into compliance with his demands, and he said less passionately than when he spoke before, "You are playing your hand for more than it is worth, young fellow. You can't bluff me. You may think you've got me foul, but I guess you haven't. You're wasting your time and mine. And now, once for all, I tell you I am not to be forced into marrying that—" He hesitated a second, and then said, "That girl, Sue Martin, and no power on earth can compel me. And now," he said, his voice rising, and his eyes gleaming with a fierce light, "you quit this room, now! You are an intruder, and for that matter, a housebreaker. You broke here, and I have a right to expel you. A right to shoot you in your tracks if you don't go when I order you, and I order you now. Go, go, or by the living God I'll fire when I count to 3. I mean business now. 1. He raised his pistol as he spoke and pointed it at the breast of Mendez. This was no empty threat of Horton. Deadly intent gleamed in his eye. The expression on his face denoted determined purpose. He would fire certain, feeling he had a right to do so, if for no other reason. 2, he exclaimed, at the expiration of about 15 seconds, full cocking his pistol as he spoke. Mendez felt assured that Horton was playing no bluff game, that he did mean business. Dead-shot as he was, he raised neither of his weapons, but instantly the word 2 of ominous import was spoken. He said, "You must be married, Harry Horton." That was all, and it was uttered in the coolest manner imaginable, with only a few seconds between him and, perhaps, death. Death! Horton designed no word in return, but with scowling brow, glowering eyes, tightened lips, and pointed pistol, stood silently facing the speaker. 15 seconds, perhaps, had elapsed since his second count. His lips moved. The fatal third count was coming. The word that would wing a bullet on an errand of death, perhaps. "The 16th of September, your birthday, Harry Horton," very calmly uttered Mendez. Very little significance there would seem in these words, yet Horton did not count 3. He stood with pistol pointing at the breast of Mendez, but his glowering gaze had modified to one intensely penetrating and searching. Not that these words were so occult in their meaning, but that they should have been uttered by one before him, was the cause of the modification of his gaze. Who is he? He mentally questioned, as he had before. He could not answer. The young fellow was an utter stranger to him. What has he got on me? He did not ask himself. He was more than half satisfied he could answer that question. His pistol he still pointed mechanically. A slight smile played on the lips of Mendez, coolly and deliberately returning the pistol in his right hand to the pocket designed for it, and the other to the pocket in the left skirt of his coat. As though certain of no further need for the weapons, he said, pulling out his watch, "It just occurs to me that this is the 16th of September, or will be in about 5 minutes. You are giving a birthday party, eh? Nothing very singular in that, but it is something singular that your wedding should come off." "It won't!" thundered Horton, but the pistol had dropped to his side. "It will," mildly returned Mendez. Hell flamed in the eyes of Horton, and he raised his pistol, murder in his heart. 2 years ago today, remember, Harry Horton? You cannot have forgotten that anniversary of your birthday," said Mendez calmly. "Shall I be more explicit, sir?" he instantly questioned with a smile. As though paralysis had seized the pistol alarm of Horton, it dropped to his side, the weapon falling from his nerveless grasp. With paling face, expanding eyelids, with eyes protruding and a sinking heart, he staggered to a seat. For an instant he gazed at Mendez, and then exclaimed in a bitter tone, "Given away by Then fiercer cried, "1,000 curses on her head! May the lowermost depths of hell—" "Hush, Harry Horton!" exclaimed Mendez in a shuddering tone, but one, nevertheless, pregnant with command. "You curse the sex," he added. "She did not give you away." "Who, then?" cried Horton, in a fairly anxious tone. Mendez stepped over to him and whispered in his ear. He started back in his seat, pushing his chair a foot over the floor. "Great God!" he ejaculated, gazing intently at the face, and then at the form of the one before him. "Is it possible?" He checked himself, and did not utter what came almost to his very lips. "Miss Clayton." "It is possible," returned Cleo, a slight smile playing on her lips. "You have my secret now, Harry Horton, as I have yours. You will keep the one if I keep the other, I'll warrant. The odds is too great against you for you to think of exchange." With these remarks, Cleo drew a chair in front of Horton and seated herself. "Are you ready now for the wedding?" she asked, looking him fixedly in the eye. He gazed at her for an instant, his eyelids drooping, his lips quivering, and his face deathly in its pallor. "My God!" he exclaimed, in low but thrilling tones. "Must it be?" "It must," was the reply. It was not harsh, but it was pitiless, relentless, and with not a shade of compromise tinging in it. The tenor of the tone thrilled Horton through and through. In her face he read his fate. Marry the girl he had wronged, he must, or choose a fearful alternative. For a moment he sat silent, and as though of stone. "It is inevitable, Harry Horton," said Cleo, rising. "The die is cast. Speak quick. Further procrastination is useless." With those unpitying, unrelenting tones ringing in his ears, Harry Horton wisely chose the least of what he considered two evils, and he said, with forced calmness, "I will marry her." "That seals it," said Cleo, and without another word started for the door, but stopped as the females of the party re-entered. "I think you ladies had better retire for a time," she said, politely raising her hat, adding, "You can have the next room until this one is ready for you again." None of the ladies made any remark, but stared at the speaker, and then glanced at one another. Turning instantly to the man she had brought to her feet, Cleo said, "I think, Mr. Horton, you will see the propriety of a certain degree of privacy in this matter, and trust you will act accordingly." Saying which she left the room for the one in which was her protégé, saying to Prince as she passed him, "The play is over, the epilogue now." Entering, she said, "Come, my dear Sue, the hour when your wrong shall be righted, as far as it can be, is on. The moment. Don't cry, don't! Be strong, be brave, be firm. Don't let him see you weep a tear, not one. Face him without a quiver and with dry eyes. That's it. Wipe away the tears, straightened up. Set your teeth hard, and think of— You, Miss Cleo. I'll think of you, and do the best I can, said the pale-faced, beautiful girl, breaking in upon her benefactress, guardian angel, rising to her feet as she spoke. Good, uttered Cleo, and for the first time that evening, kissed her pretty little protégée on her brow of Parian whiteness, refraining previously from considerations of delicacy on account of her masculine attire. 15 minutes later, and a wedding had been solemnized in that supper-room. Harry Horton and Sue Martin were man and wife, made so in the first hour of a Sunday morning. An hour before, and he entertained not the faintest thought of ever being the husband of Sue Martin, and would have scouted the idea. An hour before, and she entertained not the faintest hope of ever being the wife of Harry Horton, but prayed that she might be. And yet the two, so far apart, in this brief time were one, and closely joined. The alderman officiated, acting well his part. The officer gave the bride away in a handsome manner. Harry Horton's friend was his best man on the occasion. Cleo supported her protégée as first and the only bridesmaid. Prince was a witness at large of the ceremony. The ladies were not present on the interesting occasion. And, reader, a great change came over the spirit of Horton's dream, a wondrous change. When she, whom he had wronged, entered the room, he gave one long look at her beautiful face, then started to his feet, met and kissed her. When he took her hand at the commencement of the ceremony, he pressed it tenderly. When the words love, honor, and cherish were spoken, he exclaimed, in tones that challenged belief, I will, I swear it. When the ceremony was completed, he kissed his bride on her beautiful brow, most tenderly, most lovingly. The most devoted lover made happy could not have been more tender, more loving. A wondrous change indeed, as sudden as it was wondrous. And what a change came over the spirit of his bride's dream, over her beautiful face. If beautiful in her hour of sorrow and anguish, what was it in the hour of her surprise and joy, when radiant with sunny smiles? Superlatively lovely, a wondrous change indeed, as happy as it was wondrous. The alderman and officer might have thought things had turned out pleasanter than was anticipated. Horton's friend thought his friend had gone daft. Prince thought Horton might be playing it. Mrs. Horton, née Martin, was too surprised and happy to think anything. Harry Horton wondered how he could have cast off the beautiful woman at his side. Cleopatra Clayton was completely nonplussed. The change in Horton was too wondrous and sudden for her to accept as sincere, yet seemingly it was too sincere for her to charge it to hypocrisy. One thing she felt, that there was no halfway work about it. It was either out-and-out sincerity, or the most consummate hypocrisy, a conversion complete, or a mockery monstrous. And she told him this before they parted that night, after the alderman and officer had retired, and her last words to him were, after kissing that then happy Sue, God help you, Harry Horton, if this is hypocrisy. God help you if further wrong you inflict upon your wife. And his last words were, as he caught her gloved right hand in both of his right knee bent to the floor, As God is my judge, I am sincere. I love her, and will honor, cherish, and obey her. If I speak falsely, may I be paralyzed on the instant. A living death be mine for years, my soul's salvation on my sincerity. His bride's last words were, she, too, taking the hand of her benefactress and savior. Oh, he does love me, he does. He will be good to me always. Won't you, Harry? The confiding creature sprang to the open arms of her husband, and was pressed closely to his heart, their warm kisses commingling.
Chapter 11. Thunderbolt. A superb stallion. Large, powerful, clean-limbed, active, fiery, black as Erebus, and glossy as satin, with a small white spot, star by courtesy, on his forehead. The animal stood in front of the Hoffman House, at Broadway and 25th Street, at 4 p.m., the day following the Sunday morning chat between Cleo and Prince in the carriage. That's a splendid animal, Tom. What a head! What a neck! What limbs! What power! What mettle! What beauty, eh? Yes, he's a beauty. That bay isn't a bad beast, but he's nowhere alongside the black. Oh, isn't he a superb creature, Nellie? Perfectly splendid, Irene, I declare. I never saw such action, such life, such beauty, such grace in a horse before. Nor I. How our Fred would like to show off on him parade days. Talk about horses, Jake. How's he for high? No discount on that critter either, Sam. Pattern's good, hock fine, chest full, withers all right, head well set on, neck strong, barrel perfect. Yes, he's a horse, he is. By Jove, but that's a splendid animal, Ned. You all right there, my boy? And if 'tisn't Cleo Clayton's stallion, it's a perfect match for him. It's hers, Dick. His match doesn't exist, returned Prince. But who's going to ride him? Questioned Ned. I thought he would permit no one to get on his back but her. A friend of mine, a thorough horseman, is going to essay it, replied Prince. And here he is. Cleo stepped out of the hotel in top boots, with dainty spurs of gold, blue and white check pants closely fitting, a cutaway coat of olive hue, green kids, and carrying her dainty riding whip. So this is the animal, is it, Harry? She queried, patting the arching neck of the stallion and looking him over with the eye of a connoisseur. Yes, Juan, and if you can mount him and keep your seat on his back, you can win a basket if you accept her wager. Well, he is some horse, Harry, that's a fact, remarked Cleo, as the stallion, at the moment, whirled suddenly and quickly about, tossing his head high and giving vent to a most vociferous neigh. All of that, said Prince, smiling. You might say, entirely a horse. I'll take the wager, Harry, win or lose. Saying which, Cleo caught the stirrup with her left foot, and barely touching the saddle with her whip hand, rose quickly and swung gracefully to her seat. Catching the stirrup on the offside immediately, she settled in the saddle, and taking the curb rein in hand. No sooner was he on the back of the mettlesome creature than he made one tremendous bound forward and sideways, then suddenly reared high in the air, pawing the latter fiercely, and shaking his head as if in madness, his long and heavy mane floating and flowing rearward. Oh my God! He'll be thrown! Oh, he'll be killed! Exclaimed a gentleman and screamed a lady, almost simultaneously. For several seconds the stallion stood almost perpendicular. So nicely balanced was he that it seemed a slight push would send him down, forward or over backward, and Cleo sat him firmly, as though horse and rider were one being and inseparable. While thus poised on his hind feet, the stallion received one smart cut on the upper side of his forelegs from the whip of his rider, coming to earth with spiteful force. Backing, bounding, and fire flying from his steel-clad feet, sidling, caracoling, curveting, rearing, snorting, shaking his head, dropping it, tossing it up in the air, the foam flying from his champing jaws, his full eyes flashing forth their vivid lightnings. The stallion looked the very incarnation of fury and ferociousness. Suddenly, however, the stallion ceased his erratic movements, and, for an instant, stood as if an effigy of himself in ebony, as motionless. A slight pulling of the snuffle rein on the offside, a gentle touch of the spur on the right flank, and he sidled to the walk, and stood in all the pride and glory of strength and beauty, and, as if conscious of these, though acknowledging a higher power on his back, pawed the pavement vigorously, tossed and bowed his superb head, his luxuriant and glossy mane waving and floating from his arcing neck, and glanced at the bystanders with his restless, fiery eye, flinging the foam freely from his champing mouth to the right and left, and flecking his full, wide chest. It would have been hard to say then which the bystanders were most taken with, the skill of the rider, or the tractability of the animal that had displayed such action, spirit, force, fire, seemingly conscious of his power. Prince now mounted a fine bay horse, truly a fine animal in every particular, but suffering at all points by comparison with the black. You win the wager, Juan, he said, as he swung into the saddle. I'll waive the wine, Harry, the loser being a lady, returned Cleo, applying the spur to her horse, which bounded forward with the suddenness and force of a veritable thunderbolt itself. I told you, Harry, the boy would be hot with fire, but I'll quench some of it before I get back, she said as they rode toward 6th Avenue, a roguish light in her eye. Turning as she spoke, she saw that the audience, drawn by Thunderbolt, had not dispersed, but still gazed at the departing steed and rider. Raising her whip hand, she gracefully waved the osculatory tribute toward the lingering throng, by no means small, and after raised her hat, bowing with the utmost grace. Every lady took the kiss and bowed to herself. At least the unmarried ones did, declaring she was completely smashed with that handsome young fellow. He was so courageous and so gallant, to have known which, that he had completely smashed a young lady, would have greatly pleased Cleo. "Damn me if I don't think that's her," exclaimed the young gentleman whom we have called Ned, as Cleo dashed away. "Who?" queried his friend Dick. "Cleo Clayton." "Nonsense! The idea!" "No nonsense about it, Dick. If she took it into her head to don gentleman's apparel and ride horseback, why, she'd do it, that's all. Did you notice the foot of his? If a man's, the smallest ever made, not excepting Judge Bedford's. Besides, how he handled that stallion, whom not one horseman in 1,000 can mount. There's a strong resemblance, too." "Mere fancy, Ned. He's darker, taller, and, well, you wouldn't call that mustache false, would you?" "I didn't. But you can't most always tell nowadays what's false or what's genuine. It may not be her, but I wouldn't be surprised to know that it is. She's unaccountable." Chapter 12. Flying. "Here, young fellow, you're riding too fast altogether." This came gruffly from a mounted policeman on 7th Avenue, just above 26th Street, and was addressed to the rider of the black stallion, who was galloping the animal just then at a 10-mile gait, perhaps faster by 4 miles an hour than the law allows. "Sir," the speaker reined in the stud to a walk, and Prince, who had been left behind by this little dash of a block's distance or so, rode up alongside, the policeman remaining stationary. "Hal," said Cleo as he came up, the horses at a walk, "Thunderbolt is right on it today. Headstrong. Now, if he should happen to bolt and run away with me, why, I can't help it, you know, and might get into a scrape. If he should happen to, don't you get into one by riding faster than the law allows for it. Would do you no good. You couldn't begin to catch me, that's all." The stallion bounded forward. As she spoke, he felt the spur, when she said, "Yes, Hal, he's right on it. I feel just as though he would run." A sudden, quick, tremendous leap of the powerful creature at this instant, cut short by her utterance, and she was off at a slash gallop. For a flash of time, too brief to be measured, Prince thought that the animal had really bolted with her, but the thought died in the instant of its birth. "Nevertheless," he said to the policeman who came galloping up, "the horse has run away with him," setting into a canter as he spoke. "Not much, I guess," said the officer. "Not by a darned sight," he added, Cleo looking round at the instant, and waving her whip hand. "I'm going for him," said he, and struck into a gallop, Prince spurring up also, saying, "I'll go too, for I'm certain the stallion has got away with him." He spoke the truth, but not what he believed. The stallion had got away with him, but it was a case of Barkis's willin'. Slashing along went the officer and civilian, side by side, their steeds neck and neck for a block or so, and slashing along on the wooden pavement, at a rattling pace, went the black stallion, his speed 1/5 faster than that of the horses ridden by Prince and the officer, and increasing with every stride. "A stern chase is a long chase," remarked Prince, his steed forging ahead of the other a little. "Someone'll get him, you bet, afore he gets to the park," vouchsafed the officer, and reined in his steed, saying as he did so, "Count me out on this chase. And you pull up too," he said to Prince direct. 6 miles an hour, no more." The latter reined in and proceeded along at regulation speed. But Cleo, where was she? 6 blocks ahead and speeding like the wind. What was regulation gait to her? Her horse was running away, you know. Onward and parkward flew the unrestrained steed, the rider firmly seated, looking smiling and happy. Her soul was in arms, and, filled with the spirit of the occasion, was eager for the dash away. Block after block was passed, and so rapidly that the rider could scarce have counted them. 30th, 32nd, 4th, and 6th Streets were passed, and must have looked to the rider, if noticed at all, like narrow embrasures in a long wall of masonry. As yet no impediment had presented itself in the path of the flying courser to check its progress, and pressing on, but, just below 38th Street, near the center of the avenue, there was an impediment in the shape of one mounted squad. He would stop the animal, or perish in the attempt. The squadron's horse was going at an easy canter up the avenue, its rider looking back at the stallion thundering along at tremendous speed, and from his looks, anyone could have told he meant to stop him. Catch him on the fly. Stop that stallion, with Cleo on his back. He would be entitled to golden spurs if he could. Now he spurs his horse to its best gallop. The stallion is almost upon him, and will ride in and alongside, and catch the reins. Nothing easier for one who could do it. His horse is doing its best, making its longest strides at topmost speed. The stallion quickly closes the gap. His head is at the haunches of the squadron's horse. An infinitesimal space of time, and his nose is on a line with the squadron's right arm, and within reach. It is now, or not at all, with the bold squadron. A prize capture, or a stern chase and a long chase, with no capture at all. He knows it, and grasps forward, and to the right he quickly bends and clutches the air. The empty air. Only that and nothing more. A touch of the spur or the nigh flank, a gentle pull of the curb rein on the offside, and the stallion leaped 25 feet to the front and right, close into the walk, and was off like a bolt from a catapult, the swearing squadron following in his wake, though catching was out of the question.